Hi, my name is Anne. Thank you for coming to my channel. Easter weekend is upon us, and I thought an appropriate topic to talk about today would be my 3 favorite churches that I have visited. When I was considering what churches would be on this list, I really wanted to focus on ones that were unique. I've been to a lot of really grand churches and cathedrals. Think of places like Notre Dame in France or St. Peter's in Rome that are just enormous, have a ton of history, and are worth visiting. However, some of those churches tend to kind of blend together in your memory because there's nothing about them that really necessarily stands out. And the churches I wanted to focus on here do have something about them that makes them particularly memorable and apart from other churches, so they don't blend in with some of the other places. So let's start with our number 3 church, which is St. Nicholas in Prague. Now, there are 2 St. Nicholas churches in Prague. The one I am talking about is on the Lesser Town Square, which is really close to when you come down the stairs from the Prague Castle area. It's just down the hill from that. And it is probably the lesser known of the 2 churches. Really, the only reason we went in there is because it was raining and we wanted to get out of the rain, so we thought that would be a great place to go, and we are so glad we did. The thing that makes this particular church unique is the statuary, the quantity of it and the quality of it. So there are statues everywhere, and the thing about them that makes them different is they have a lot of movement to them. So sometimes they're holding things and they look like their arms could move. They're looking down on you when they're statues that are really high up. Sometimes they're sitting on something and their legs are dangling down and look like they could move. It was just fantastic. You wanted to stop and look at every single statue in the place, which it would take you a long time if you tried to do that. But it ended up being one of our highlights in Prague, and it was very close to our hotel where we were staying, and we would have missed it were it not for the rain, because this is the lesser known probably of the 2 St. Nicholas churches in Prague. So I highly recommend visiting this particular church. It's not right on the square. It's kind of hidden behind some other buildings on the square, but you'll see the top of it over the other buildings that are there. So highly recommend. My second favorite church is in Paris, and it's probably more accurately categorized as a chapel than a church, but I'm going to count it, and that is Sainte-Chapelle. It is one of those places that when I entered it, I think I actually gasped out loud because of how beautiful it is. So when you arrive at Sainte-Chapelle, you enter through the basement where there are the souvenir shops and things like that, and then you make your way up a set of stairs and you come in sort of in the back corner of the church, and you turn to your left and there's all the stained glass. And that's what made me gasp in awe. It is just beautiful. It surrounds the entire perimeter of the church. Again, it's a thing you want to go and look at every single part of it because it is so beautiful. And even the floor in that church, I think, is interesting and unique, and I really enjoyed seeing that as well. It was a church that when I went back down the stairs in the opposite corner, I had to turn around and take one last look. It is amazing. Now, this church does have a price to visit. So I should say St. Nicholas is, I think because it's a smaller church, a lesser known church, at least when I was there a few years ago, you could just walk in. With Sainte-Chapelle, you do have to pay to get in, and it is best to purchase your tickets in advance on their website so you get a time when you should arrive. They do have a line for people who don't have tickets, but that can take a long time. So save your time, buy a ticket in advance. You arrive about 15 minutes early and you'll get right in. Lots of sites in Europe are like that now. So I always recommend checking to see if you can book in advance so that it just makes everything easier for you. And then my number 1 favorite church is a basilica. It is the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. Now, this is a very grand church. I said at the beginning, just being grand wasn't going to be enough. This is, but it is because of the architect of the church and his philosophy that makes it really special. So the architect is Antoni Gaudi, and he believed that his architecture should reflect nature. And that is exactly what you see when you go to the Sagrada Familia. It looks, when you're inside, like you are in a forest and the sun is coming down through the leaves in the forest. So the pillars branch out like they have tree trunks and branches. And then on one side of the cathedral, the stained glass is yellow and orange. On the other side, it's blue and green. And you really do have that feeling of filtered light. It is absolutely gorgeous. It's unlike anything I've ever seen anywhere. And overall, I'm just a huge fan of Gaudi's work. I find it to be just so interesting to see and fascinating that he came up with some of these ideas. The Sagrada Familia is a bit expensive to enter. You have to buy a ticket in advance. There is no line for you to just walk up. In fact, there are QR codes posted around the perimeter of the basilica so you can go online and purchase your ticket. But I think it's absolutely worth it. The one thing that I would say is not worth it is going up one of the towers. I did that on my last visit, and the views really, to me, weren't great, and you don't get to spend a lot of time up there. You end up actually spending more time walking down the spiral stairs than you do actually seeing anything. So if you're trying to save money, I wouldn't do that. You can also pay a little extra for either an audio guide or a guided tour. Whether that's worth it is going to depend on whether you like having that information. Otherwise, if you want to save money, just going in and looking around, I think, is totally worth it. But I think if you've never been there before, you might want to learn more about it. If you absolutely cannot afford to go inside, you still want to go by and look at the outside, because even that is interesting and that is free. So you've got two main facades to the Sagrada Familia. On one side is the Nativity facade, which has statuary depicting the birth of Jesus. This side is a little bit more busy in terms of the design. Some people would call it gaudy. It's not my favorite part of the church, but it is definitely really interesting to see. On the other side is the Nativity facade. It is much more austere, which makes sense because it is depicting Jesus's death. And so it is not as decorative as the Nativity facade is. Both sides are absolutely beautiful in their own right, and you definitely want to take a walk around the basilica and see that. I stayed at a hotel near the basilica my last time in Barcelona, and I just loved seeing it every single day that I was there, and that's what makes it my number one church that I have seen. A word about visiting churches. I have talked to people who have said, well, I'm not religious, so I don't go into churches. And I really don't think you need to be religious to go into a church. Certainly there might be an added meaning to it if you're going to worship when you go into these places. But honestly, you look at the value in terms of art and history and architecture. If you are interested in any of those aspects, completely aside from religion, I think you will get a lot out of visiting churches, especially if it's one that is free. And so it's not as if you're spending money to go into something that you might not be interested in. So if you're someone who traditionally avoids visiting churches when you are in another country, I highly recommend that you add it to your list, try it a few times. I promise no one's going to burn if you go in, if you're not of the appropriate religion. I frequently will also go into mosques or synagogues that are important to a place where I am. I don't have those particular beliefs, but I still can get a lot of value from visiting those locations and learning about not only that religion, but about what that particular building stands for. So if you've been to any of these churches, I'd love to hear what you think of them. If you have a different church you have seen somewhere in the world, post that in the comments as well. It'll give me and everyone else ideas of places to visit when we are traveling. So I hope you found this video interesting. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.